this building that we're in right here, Troy, had hundreds of students that you taught and many that you changed the lives of. What is it like coming here now, seeing it used for something completely different?
Yeah, I think about it every time I walk in the building. It's like, wow, I used to have this building, and my wife and I bought it in 1999.
Is there a time you remember in your adolescence when you really messed up? Whether it was with a friendship or a relationship, you just did something bad.
Yes, there was. There was times when I did some terrible stuff. It's hard to even say what I did, but I'm gonna be honest that there for a time I was when I started driving, some friends and I'm gonna mention all their names. I'm not missing any names.
I was like, okay.
You're like, oh no.
I'm only going to talk about me. I started taking karate when I was 11 years old, so when I was 16 years old, I knew how to kick pretty good, and I would kick someone's window in. And
Of their car?
Of their car. And I would steal their they used to call them, they used to call them equalizers. So this equalizer would make the music in your car would really be really loud, because if you just had a regular radio, it wasn't loud enough. So I would break in cars by busting the window, many times kicking them in, and steal the equalizer, and we would give them to our friends or sell them to our friends or whatever. But that was so horrible. We know when you do wrong. A little 5-year-old kid, you can say, you can ask them, was that right or wrong? And pretty much, maybe 6 or 7, maybe a little bit older, they know what's right or wrong. So me, knowing I was raised in the church, and that I'm not going to get to heaven because I was raised in church. I get to heaven because I've been born again, I've been saved, and also I made a public witness. I was baptized. I think I got baptized twice, maybe 3 times. But and I rededicated my life in 1998 when I was a big boy. I was 35 years old, and I want to tell the truth. When you talk to me about things, I want to let people know that they're not the only person that's messing up.
Mr. Starkey, what would you use to describe Troy?
Relentless devotion. Can I use 2 words?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's mix it up here. I love it, and I think love, relentless devotion, these are great words. Troy, I want to first ask you, what was it like having Mark as a student?
Well, I could always count on him to be there to help me out if I needed help, and just be in class so that he could working towards his goals of staying or getting in shape. There would be times when he'd go by months, but he would send me letters when I was training or whatever it may be. He's been I have more letters from him than I have from anybody in my life.
What's one thing you've learned from each other that still sticks with you to this day? And I'll go with you first, Troy.
Well, what I've learned from him, like I said, just I guess a different way to love.
He's a very, very loyal friend, and every time I talk to him, he's always up, and his faith in God, his trust in Jesus. He's just, I just admire him so much. I mean, he is courageous in terms of his witnessing to people.
Mark, with that, what is a roadblock that you had to overcome while you were a student of Troy's, dealing with the martial arts? Was there any roadblock you specifically remember that maybe was the most difficult to move past? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, I really wanted to be a kickboxer, but I did not have the confidence in myself. But Mr. Dorsey believed in me. And so for the next 8 weeks, I trained 6 days a week. I did all I could to get ready, because I thought, well, if he believes in me enough to think I can do it, then I'm going to do my best to try to do it. He would say, time out, time out, time out, time out. I know one time hitting him with a round kick and a round kick, and he said, "Hold it, time out." He says, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to stop you from punching me." He said, "You'll never stop me with a round kick. That goes to the side. What you need to do is you need to side kick me. If you want to stop me from punching you, you need to side kick me. That's the kick to use."
Fasten your seatbelts. Let's go.
There you go. These people, it was very positive comments that they left about different ways that you touch their lives or how they have known you. And it just really shows that you have impacted a lot of people.
Well, thank you very much. Now I'm going to cry even worse.
It's okay.
But thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And that's what you got out of what you were
I
seeing
did.
and out of your research. And
It was all positive, you know, it was all positive things they had to say.
I'm very fortunate. It's the way I was raised, and then I had the encouragement and the support of my wife. So many men, they don't have that support, especially when they're fighting, you know, and there's many times when I really was busted up bad. Broke my hand and messed my eye up and had to have surgery, but then continue to still support and be behind me is, I don't know, that if my wife would have been in the same shoes, I don't know if I would have been able to say, go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this. What was like the worst injury you ever had from fighting?
The detached retina was the worst injury that I
Oh my
had.
goodness.
Oscar De La Hoya detached my retina in the first round, but he also, well, I hurt him. He broke his hand also in the first round, and he had to punch differently for the rest of his career
Because of you.
because of me.
Oh
His
my
hand
goodness.
was jacked up. So
But I'm going to throw something in there. So he's talking about Oscar De La Hoya, right?
Oscar the Golden Boy.
Yes.
De La Hoya.
You know, one of the greatest boxers in the history, you know, is what most would call him. If you know, especially his weight class, is that was a fight. I remember watching that fight with you, Troy, and you and Oscar was taller than you a lot. He was a tall guy.
Oh, yes,
and he was
sir.
quick. He had long arms, and you know, we're going to share some of these videos as we get going later on. But I'm going to tell you, you can see that fierceness in Troy because he just wouldn't back down. I mean, he kept going at him, and when you watch Troy's fights, and I want to encourage you to try to watch some of those, as many as you can, because he's relentless. He's non-stop. He just always attacks.
And I'm so fortunate that I was able to fight somebody like that and do what I was able to do. I didn't beat him. They stopped the fight because I had a bad cut. He broke his hand. I got cut real bad, and they stopped the fight. And I thought, they're just stopping it because he's the golden boy. And I got cut bad, and I could still see. So whenever the blood goes into your eye heavily like that, you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see because I said it went down the side of my face. There were some fights where I couldn't see, and it was kind of scary. That's why they stop fights, so that people don't get injured and get hurt as bad as they could if they can't see. So, yes, he was the first. I was the first world champion that he fought, and it worked out the way it worked out. And of course, I wish I would have beat him. And Oscar, if you're listening to this, I'd like to have a rematch.
Troy, let's start with you. Do you remember how you first met Mr. Ratner?
I'm trying to think which fight it was. Of course, he was over the Las Vegas Boxing Commission. He was the commissioner. I fought Jorge Paez a couple of times there, and I fought Bernardo Pinango there. I fought Oscar De La Hoya there. So over those fights, that's when I met him.
Does that sound about accurate, Mr. Ratner?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And those are big fights, and no, I remember exactly. And this was earlier in Oscar's career, but still, that's a big time fight.
Now, I do have to ask, is it true that you are a pretty huge UNLV fan and you still serve as a shot clock operator?
Yes, I am I'm I try to be objective, but I've been running the clock there since I don't know, probably 40 years or so.
I would
So
say you
I've
definitely
been,
are a fan.
no,
For
it's
sure.
an enjoyable part of my outside the fight game.
Right. And that leads me to my next question, Mr. Ratner. It's very obvious you're passionate about the mixed martial arts industry and the sport. When you first joined the UFC, only 22 states were regulating MMA. Obviously, that is not the case now. How did you help get the sport of mixed arts sanctioned in those other states?
First of all, it wasn't only me. We had a little team. I was the face of it in certain ways, but we went around to state capitals and had to meet with legislatures, senators, and assembly people. And you just can't walk into any uh, to an office for a state senator or a state legislator. So you have to hire lobbyists, which is a very expensive way to do it, and they'll get you into those. And back then, this was in the early, I guess, early 2000s. Uh, Most of the people we dealt with didn't understand ultimate fighting or mixed martial arts, but their staff did. But you were dealing with an older generation, and a lot of education, a lot of videos, and we went state by state, and finally now it's regulated throughout the country, as well as we were in Paris about 2 months ago, uh, Brazil 3 weeks ago, and we just came back from New York Sunday. So we're everywhere.
How important is education in the sport of mixed martial arts today?
Well, first of all, education you need to get the sport approved, and as I said, you have to go around teaching because there are a lot of people who only see highlights of UFC. They'll see a 10-second knockout, and they'll see a guy on the ground getting pounded, and say, well, "This is vicious. You can't have a sport like that." But there are plenty of rules now. It's well regulated by the state athletic commissions, but it's an ongoing thing with education. And
Anything you'd like to add to that, Troy?
Yeah, it's just it's not fighting. There's a difference between street fighting and fighting in the ring. You know, there's rules and there's a referee, there's judges. So it's not someone that's just a crazy street fighter. They're not going to do very well in jiu-jitsu if they don't follow the rules. So it's not there are rules. You follow the rules, and there's great people that are good boxers that have won before, and there are great good people that have won, and there are great karate guys like George St. Pierre. So there's a big mixture of different types of styles of martial arts, and they all come together in the UFC.
Troy, let me ask you, because you are inside those karate schools, what's that like, the raising awareness about combat sports? How are you helping with that?
Well, the mixed martial arts for sure is help that out to bring some awareness to martial arts, and people want to do it, and they think they want to become a mixed martial arts fighter until they get hit in the face one time, and they figure out, oh, this is not so good for me. But yeah, it brought a lot of awareness to it, and brought some good attention, of course. And there's always bad things going on around the world, but mainly I think it's brought a lot of attention to the martial arts.
We may have our most unsafe guest ever in the history. It's none other than Troy Dorsey, Mansfield grown, a Mansfield product, the greatest fighter. We're gonna find out here to see. I say yes, the greatest kickboxer, and pound for pound, the greatest fighter that I've seen. I know you're born here in Mansfield. You grew up here. You started fighting here. Is that safe to say?
My first fight was in Fort Worth. I say fight. I'm talking about the.
We're not talking school fights.
Talking I was 11 years old. I actually started martial arts because I was getting bullied on at school. I just wouldn't fight back. So that's why I started martial arts. because I was getting bullied on.
And you know what? I guarantee you that didn't last long, Troy. You came out and you ended up being the first fighter ever to hold the title in kickboxing and in the welter. What was it?
Oh, featherweight.
Featherweight
And junior lightweight boxing world title also. Yes.
And how many people have owned that title since?
Oh, since then, well, that title, as far as being able to do that, I don't know of anyone that has won the world title in point karate, in kickboxing, and also in boxing.
My gosh, Troy, some of those kicks you did were amazing. I mean, seriously, how do you ever catch? I just struggle to think you can really catch somebody off guard, but yet you do it all the time. Talk to me. What's the secret in catching them folks off guard on them round-offs, right?
Well, it may sound easy, but it's this way. We trained. My trainer would say, when they do this, you do this. When they do this, you do this. So in other words, when they jab, you side kick them in the body. So they jab, and then after I've already picked it up on it twice, they jab again, boom. Or when they jab or when they kick with the front leg, then you do the turn kick, or some people call it spinning kick. When they did X, you do Y. So it's a timing thing. It really is something you have to be really tuned in and be focused to be able to read what they're going to do, because what they've done, if they do it 3 or 4 times in a row, then they don't normally do it 5, 6 times in a row. It's just that you have to, when you see that coming, you do X. When you see something else coming, you do something else. So it was, so often people think that fighting is not a thinking game, but you have to think a lot.
Troy, when you bought, the
They
facility
got
you're at,
BCB coming downtown.
BCB Live. Hey, we're going to be there, but probably in
Downtown.
September. We can't wait for that.
Yeah.
But before BCB Live, it was Troy Dorsey's Karate Studio.
Yes,
and
sir.
before that, when you bought it, it was a Western Auto.
It was. It had been a Western Auto for 42 years, and I bought it in 99, so that goes way back.
Yeah.
I guess from the
Do you remember
50.
the day that you got those keys? I mean, do you remember when you actually got that Western Auto, that building, and you're like, oh my God, I'm in business, I'm sure, right? Now, is that excitement? Is that fear? A little bit of both?
I think a little bit of both. Yes, sir. But overall, at that, I remember just being thankful to the Lord that He brought me back from where I started.
Troy, what is it like watching these past interviews that you did with us?
Well, it's just really, I don't know, when talking about myself, I feel like I may be doing some bragging. I hope it doesn't sound like that to the audience, but it just gives me some able to reflect back on my life and think about these fights and what they did for me and what they did against me.
Right.
And the thing that it's been great looking back at my life story here.
And I know how it could feel like bragging, but what we're really doing here is creating, a documentary style podcast, and that takes talking a lot about your life, know, and it's not just that. We've said in the past, I think there's a lot that people can learn from you, so you've got to tell your story to where it could possibly connect with others.
What's so special about Troy Dorsey? Well, let me tell you something about Troy. Troy's from Mansfield, Texas. He's an 8-time world boxing champion. Is that right?
World champion.
World champion. So it's been karate. It's been
Boxing.
boxing. As a matter of fact,
And
he's the
kickboxing.
only one that we know of, right? That's
Yes,
had
sir.
the boxing and karate championship, world championship,
And kickboxing.
and kickboxing.
Those 3.
Troy, what is your story? What made you go from Troy Dorsey to Troy Dorsey, the karate champion?
Well, I was getting picked on in 5th grade, so a little earlier than what you were talking about. So that year, after 5th grade, this summer, my dad started me and my 2 brothers, Brian and Rodney, in karate, so we could defend ourselves. And then I went back to school, and I thought I was Bruce Lee, of course, in the 6th grade, and the guy came up to me and so I fought back.
we're into your prime of your boxing. And when you're boxing, and we're not talking karate or kickboxing right now, we're talking boxing. I mean, you fought some big names back then. You fought, in championships when it's USA against Russia. You fought against Jorge Paez.
Jorge Marmero Paez
Yes,
from
Paez.
from
And those of you
Mexico.
know Paez, I mean, he was known the clown, right? I mean,
Yes, sir. Marmero is the clown. That was his nickname because he would do
clown.
backflips and front flips and cartwheels. And
that's gotta be old school. So a lot of you, if you're younger than 40, you may not know what I'm talking about,
Right.
but you do know this name, Oscar De La Hoya.
oh yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I mean, he has fought. How many boxing matches have you fought?
33.
33. And what was your record?
You cut me. I don't know my record.
So I'm going to go back and we talk about the Russian because Troy, when you were fighting out there, this was like ABC TV, right?
I didn't fight on ABC. I did fight on NBC.
NBC.
And also pay-per-view and USA Fight Nights.
Pay-per-view.
Yes, sir.
Pay-per-view. But when you talk about NBC, that was a championship fight.
Channel 5, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Channel 5. I remember that fight.
So we have a saying. I don't know if I should say it or not. I'm gonna say this saying.
okay.
It's gonna say so. The people come in the front door and they enroll in the program, but then they go out the back door. They quit. They go out the back door. So it's we have a new generation now, and kids, like I said, they're on the game. They're on their game, and it's something new all the time. And martial arts takes, what does it take? It takes practice. It takes repetitiveness. It's over and over. Yeah. And yeah, it takes effort.
And not just from the kid, but from their parents.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to have a team. The parents, when the kid says, I don't want to go to karate day, well, the parents should say, well, we committed.
Yeah.
We committed. Remember that day we committed, and we're going to finish our commitment. So how many people do you know that finishes out their commitments now?
Yeah, not
The
many.
younger generation. So
I mean,
anyway.
and for a parent, life is so busy right now, right? I mean, which just seems like we have cell phones, we have all of these things that are supposed to make our lives easier, and they don't. They create more chaos. They create. You read about, you get emails about, about work or something that you really shouldn't see until tomorrow when you're at work, and yet you read it and it ruins your night.
Right.
And it's almost like the parents probably like, hey, Junior, you don't want to go to that karate tonight, do you? Encouraging them.
Yeah.
Because their day has been messed up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it takes a big gap. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. People want to get the quick fix. They want to get the quick fix, but it's not out there.
Yeah. No.
So they have to. It takes dedication. It takes time, and it takes no matter what it is, that whether we're the parent or the person doing the martial arts, it takes time and it takes dedication. So that's we build the person's dedication, and we teach them about respect and self-control and discipline. On my website, there's people just saying so many nice things about what I've been able to do, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without the Lord Jesus Christ first. And then my parents started this in karate when I was 11, and then now my wife came right up, and she's been with me for 40 years.
Ty has been in the martial arts fighting industry learning for over 30 plus years, and we are so excited to have him on the show today. Ty, can you also tell us how you first met Troy and what's it been like training under him?
Well, my coach was one of Mr. Dorsey's first black belts. My regular coach, my day-to-day coach, my mentor is Mark Sturkey, and he started coaching me when I was a teenage boy. I was a black belt in Taekwondo, but I was wanting to learn how to be more competitive, and he started teaching me kickboxing instead of karate and Taekwondo, and he was always telling me these war stories about, well, Troy did this, and Troy went over to England or Ireland, and Troy fought in Europe, and Troy went to Germany, so I grew up hearing about all these war stories. Later on, right when I graduated college, I got to test for my 4th degree black belt under Master Dorsey. It was so cool because for 10 years, it was like hearing legends of Thor or legends of Hercules. Then all of a sudden you're working out with Hercules. It was so cool. Then you go another 10 years and Mr. Dorsey asked me to be his business partner and help him with the Troy Dorsey kickboxing curriculum and a few other things. And then after we started working together as a business, he kind of started becoming my daily coach. And I think Mr. Dorsey's cornered me, I think in my last 11 full contact fights now. I could be off by a little bit, but He's been in my corner every time I've laced up my gloves to fight competitively for the last 2 or 3 years. He's been in my corner, so I'm just blessed to get to grow up and train with one of my childhood heroes.
Troy, can you explain to us, especially for our viewers that may not know, when you're in his corner, does that basically just mean you're his biggest cheerleader? Like, what does that look like?
Get them to get the fighter to kind of calm down. Usually they're kind of breathing fast and they're all excited. So yeah, just kind of get them to settle down, and then also let them know, get them ideas what they should be doing, what they could be doing, what their opponent's doing, and how to defend those things. So they're defend those techniques. So working on just overall helping them win the round, one round at a time. Now, Mr. Garrett he's an unbelievable fighter. He's a thinking fighter. So and he rarely gets hit. Developed a friendship. I've been to his house many times. He's been to my house, and he is the curriculum originator or developer for our Troy Dorsey kickboxing organization, which we have schools that use the curriculum, or they can work with our business systems, or they can do it all. So anyway, he's awesome, both in the business and both in developing curriculum. He really has a gift for sure in those 2 or 3 areas, and fighting too. So he's just the wrap it all in once. He's a great businessman. He's a great fighter. He's a great coach. He's a great trainer, a great teacher. He's just he's a rare person, very rare person. Usually, someone can teach, or they can sell, or they can only teach, or they can only sell, or they can only run a business, or they can only all the skills that it takes to be a martial artist and being a business owner. Not many of them hardly any can operate like he operates, both in the ring and outside the ring. He's unbelievable.
Troy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. We had a fantastic Jesus-filled Christmas yesterday and the day before, so it just keeps on going. And yeah, we were very fortunate to see our kids, our grandkids, our son-in-laws, and my parents. My dad's birthday is December 25th.
Oh, really? He's a Christmas baby.
Yeah. So we celebrated my earthly father's birthday and my heavenly father's birthday.
Let's talk about Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. You remember that fight when those two got together, and I think it was twice that Tyson bit his ear. You remember that?
Twice?
Twice. I think he bit it twice. For sure he did it the once, right?
He bit it off.
Yeah, he bit it off. I mean, he bit it off in that. It was that featherweight, the frustration level, right? You're getting beat, and Tyson was just getting beat by Evander.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that. Obviously, it's not the right thing to do. Hey, kids, if you're at home, don't go bite your brother or sister's ear off.
Well,
I'm not saying it's never excusable.
Kids get frustrated and they do things like that.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to bite somebody's ear off, but he was a big kid at that time.
So I mean, I know we look at that and we think, God, that was horrendous. But you're in a war when you're in that boxing, right?
Yeah,
Take me through that, because there's things you do as a person. You know, we see it in football, baseball. You know, things that's unfortunately outline or define a boxing or somebody's career by that one little act.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you're frustrated. You're getting beat. Troy, talk me through some of those days when you were just in the corner. Maybe you're getting hit and you're like, I can't win this, and you're frustrated, and you got to, in your mind, say, I've got to do something, anything to get an advantage.
Well, it's a losing battle at times. You know, you can come back stronger, and you come back sometimes you're not stronger, because there's always out there somebody better and tougher. And it really is tough, though, in the ring, as far as, and I'm not saying it's not tough on the football field, it's not tough on the basketball court, it's tough in all sports. But when you're boxing or kickboxing, yeah, there's somebody kicking you, somebody punching you, and it can be very difficult to fight through, especially when you're frustrated. But so when you're frustrated, what do we typically do? We don't do something. We do something we're not proud of. In other words, we retaliate.
Yep.
But retaliation is not what we should be doing. And when I fought Jesse James Lehall from San Antonio, Texas, he cut me up pretty bad. I had 2 cuts up here, going this way, like this, and then 1 cut here, 1 cut here, 1 cut here, And I got in the fourth round, the end of the fourth round, I believe it was. I got hit with a punch that was right on my eye, and it was swollen shut. And when he hit me in the eye, oh, it was just so painful. And I remember I didn't fall down; I just took a knee. But I was on the inside. I was crying. I was hurting. It was tough. And then I stood up in the bell ring, I believe, and then went back and then they stopped the fight because of the cuts.
That was a big part of boxing, the trash talking before the fight, right?
It was, but I never did it before then. Pretty much, I don't recall, and I didn't do it after.
Certainly not afterwards.
No,
right?
because it was just. That was not my style, and some people they're real arrogant and real.
So what was your style?
My style was to talk with my hands and talk with my feet.
What about when you got headbutt? I know you had to get headbutt in a time or two, right?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to know the pain level on that. Is that just the worst pain, getting headbutt?
Sometimes when they headbutt you, I mean, yes, it can be really painful. Sometimes you don't even really. You're so amped up. You're amped up, and you don't even really feel it.
So, Roy, if you'll first start for us, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how exactly you met Mr. Troy here.
Well, I started training in 1965 when I was a junior at Sam Houston High School in Arlington. And I started first with Alan Steen, and for a period of time he quit teaching in Arlington. He was opening up other schools in Dallas. So I started training with Ed Johnson at the local YMCA, who was a famous Ishinru teacher and practitioner. And when Ed left to go back to went to East Texas to ride wild horses and do the rodeo, I went back with Mr. Steen and I stayed with him to black belt. I made my black belt in '68. So I trained at UTA, and I trained under some of the best black belts in the United States. He had Skipper Mullins there, but the guy I spent the most time with was Larry Castor. Tremendous teacher and coach, great life experience. To this day, I owe him so much. You think about your teachers and how much you owe them, what an influence they had on your life, and Larry Castor was certainly the man. Skipper Mullins was one of the first 4 Americans to win the world championship. Skipper Mullins won the lightweight, and then Chuck Norris won the middleweight, Mike Stone the light heavyweight, and Joe Louis won the heavyweight. That was in New York City in 1968. So it was a wonderful, exciting time to be in the martial arts. I watched Chuck fight in Dallas in 1968. I was a brown belt just before I made black. And good fighters walk out of the ring, and after he beat me, they'd walk out and go, what just happened? I don't know how he did that. He could throw him, he could sweep him, he was good with both legs, both hands, beautiful techniques and timing, but there were so many good people experimenting. They were at first it was Japanese all the way, Japanese stylists, form, kicks, punches, everything. Koreans the same way, Chinese the same way, and then America got a dose of what we later call being eclectic. If it works, use it. Here's a perfect example.
Right.
A Taekwondo black belt who developed devastating punches, and he put it together. So he was a champion not only in the competition in tournaments, he was a champion in kickboxing and a world champion and a champion in boxing. So he did the whole thing. And there are only a few people that did that. Joe Louis did it, and he did it. And there were some other great fighters that kind of stayed in their lane, but they did great things. I could talk about Ron Marchini. Bill Wallace was probably the best of my generation. Jeff Smith was incredible. There was Pat Worley. The scope and the depth of the fighting pool was unbelievable.
Well, it's obvious, Roy, you've had a very successful career so far.
I got to tell you, I was blessed. I've had a very successful life because of the martial arts, because of my teachers, because of my friends. I've had a very fortunate life. But the martial arts will teach you can do anything you set your mind to.
One style of fighting we haven't discussed is one you'd study called Ishinru. Mm-hmm. Did I say that right?
You did.
I actually looked up videos online to make sure how to pronounce it because I didn't want to butcher it. So can you tell us what that style of fighting is? Is it a common style of fighting? How did you learn it?
Well, what you're looking at is one of the older styles. You're looking at a style from Okinawa. And the chief instructor was named Shimabukuro. And he was the one that taught Ed Johnson. Ed was in Okinawa for almost 5 years. He was with the Marine Corps, and he was there as a Marine guard, a jail guard, and he trained every day with Shimabukuro. They had old ways of doing things that have since changed. We have what you call traditional martial arts, where they do it as close to the original practicing as possible. That's in Aikido, in Judo, in Karate. In every martial art you look at, there's some people that stick very close to the traditional way. And when it was first developed, it was developed to be used against people that had weapons, when you did not.
Roy, let's talk a little bit more about you refereeing some of Troy's fights. So it sounds like you did about 25 maybe of his fights in his career. What was the biggest fight you'd say you refereed for?
I'd probably say that Sante Wilson fight, because they were so evenly matched. He was just too strong for Sante Wilson. But Sante Wilson just retired as a deputy sheriff in Dallas County.
Oh, wow.
He had a great life too. He was a good man. He was a great fighter. He won a title. But the thing is, when you had two really great fighters up there, it was just wonderful to be in the ring, and you had to stay out of the way because they changed directions and moved so fast. But it was just a joy to watch it. And having been a fighter and understood what was involved, it gave me an edge in refereeing and judging. And like I say, it was the best seat in the house. I had a whole lot of fun for about 10 years after I retired doing that.
Troy is yet again on the loose, and I can't find him anywhere.
Yes, I'm so fortunate. I know there's so many people that are broke up, and so many parents that are broke up, so they don't have what I had. My parents were together. My grandparents, except on my mother's side, were together. That was difficult sometimes, but it was always good to see them. When I say difficult sometimes, of course, when that first happened, when the marriage was off, then that was very difficult. I remember crying, but everybody, it all turned out, and of course that's not the way that the Lord wants it. In the Bible it says that the Lord hates divorce. So that's I'm not trying to say that it's okay. I'm just trying to say that my family, they made it okay, and my parents made sure that we had the happiest time that we could have.
You were always taken care of.
Very thankful. I was always taken care of. I said thankful, taken care of, but I said
close enough.
So yeah, I'm very thankful looking back on that time. So now it's the time to share with my kids, and now we had grandkids last year, June 4th and July 7th they were born, so this year they're walking and talking and really just God's little miracles walking around at our house.
And I think that's important that you still remember what you felt as a child with the holidays, and what was that like then, as you were saying, having your own kids before you even had or even thought of having grandkids. What was that like, getting to now be the parent, getting to share that with your own kids, Thanksgiving?
It's just that I can't explain it any more than saying, and I don't want to belittle the word, but it's just a huge blessing is what it is to have those babies, and they're hugging on you and kissing on you and calling you Papa. And my wife, Gigi, she's such a great grandmother. She's not a great grandmother. Make sure we get that, that she's not a great grandmother. She is a great, as in the way she acts, the way she takes care of our grandkids. She babysits for them all the time, and oftentimes I get to be there when I'm home from work or on the days that I'm off. I get to be there with the kids, but my wife is an amazing Gigi is what she wants to be called. So we're still, there's the babies that are doing that now. That's what they call her. They call her Gigi. It's so cute the way they say it.
Troy, what does it feel like when you first started competing professionally? Like, how sore did you feel after a fight?
Oh, I was sore. Sometimes I was sore for a week or two. Black eyes and cuts and broke hand. So that's in a nutshell. Some of the things that happened. Broke my hand. They said that my nose was that it looks like my nose has been broken, but I don't know when my nose is broken.
Has you ever noticed it breathing through it a little differently or anything like
No,
that?
I can breathe through both sides.
Yeah.
So it's still good.
Hey,
It's
it
still
works.
good.
It works.
Yeah. And I was kicked in the sternum, so I had a cracked sternum. But that was trained for kickboxing fight. That wasn't for
Right.
just normal stuff that we do at the school. But yeah, in professional fighting, broke my ribs, my sternum, my hand, and I think that's all.
That's all. That's it. The long list.
Yeah.
So, Marion, can you tell us a little bit about how you met Troy and the building that we're in today?
Well, I know on some of your previous podcasts, he's explained this was a Western Auto
Yeah.
first, which I find kind of unique because for however many years they sold tools,
Yeah.
and then he bought it and taught tools.
That's true. Different kind of tool.
Yeah, one of your instructors, Mr. Sapp,
Yeah.
used to always say, "I've got a few tools in my bag too."
Yeah.
Very true.
So that's how I'm familiar with this building. But you know, I live outside of town here, between here and Alvarado, about 10 miles from here, and so we were familiar when he was going through his fighting career. And I still remember to this day watching him on TV when he fought for the title. And one thing I haven't heard you mention in the past podcast, but I still remember to this day listening and thinking, he won that fight. Mr. Dorsey won that fight.
Are you talking about the Oscar De La Hoya one?
No, the
Pass.
Oh, is that the
Right.
controversial one?
yeah.
So it actually was briefly mentioned in the interview we had with Lester Bedford. He was talking about it like when Troy won that fight, and Troy's like, I didn't win that fight.
Right. But what I hadn't heard anybody mentioned was I remember the announcers talking about he may have outpointed him, Mr. Dorsey did, but because he was the contender and the other guy was the champion, it had to be a decisive victory.
Yep.
And they were talking while they were waiting on the judge's decision that it might not go the way we think it will because of that reason. And that's exactly what happened.
I know.
So that's how I first became familiar with him. So my son was in high school, and Michael came to us and expressed an interest in maybe taking martial arts. And for me, it was a no-brainer. Like, we got a guy with 8 world title belts right down the street. I didn't even go out and shop prices. I just walked in the back door and said, all right, sign this kid up.
Right.
And that's how he got started. But I remember a lot of times sitting where the parents sit. There was a window and the kids were working out on the mat and watching what was going on. And there was a lot of things that impressed me back then. Like, number one was this was a place that didn't have a shrine in one end of it, like a lot of them did. And that was important because my family wasn't going to train somewhere like
Right.
that. And number two, I remember watching when he would demonstrate stuff, and I didn't know anything about martial arts. We were what you might call a beltless family. Nobody had ever trained before. And he would demonstrate stuff, and I would think, that's perfect. Perfectly level, perfectly straight. I thought, man, his technique is awesome.